Munther Isaac is a Palestinian Christian pastor and theologian. He pastors the Evangelical Lutheran Christmas Church in Bethlehem and the Lutheran Church in Beit Sahur. He's also the academic dean of Bethlehem Bible College and is the director of the highly acclaimed and influential Christ at the Checkpoint conferences. Munther speaks locally and internationally and has published numerous articles on issues related to the theology of the land, Palestinian Christians and Palestinian theology, holistic mission and reconciliation. He is the author of a number of books. He is also involved in many reconciliation and interfaith forums, and is a Kairos Palestine board member. Munther originally studied civil engineering in Birzeit University in Palestine. He then obtained a master in biblical studies from Westminster Theological Seminary, and then a PhD from the Oxford Center for Mission Studies. Munther is married to Rodena, an architect, and together they have two boys, Karam and Zaid, ages 11 and 9. Welcome, Munther, and thank you so much for taking time out of what I'm absolutely sure is a very busy schedule to be with us today. I'm taking the liberty of speaking on behalf of everyone here when I say that we are heartbroken at what the Palestinians have been forced to go through, not just now, but for the past 76 years. We're angry and frustrated at the inaction and collusion by those who have the power to stop this, and we feel powerless, wondering how each one of us can make a difference. These feelings are completely normal. How else would healthy human beings respond in the face of such unnecessary suffering? In Crust in the Rubble, you quote the Zionist Israeli historian Benny Morris, who said, and I quote, "A Jewish state would not have come into being without the uprooting of 700,000 Palestinians. Therefore, it was necessary to uproot them. There was no choice but to expel that population. It was necessary to cleanse the hinterland and cleanse the border areas and cleanse the main roads. It was necessary to cleanse the villages from which our convoys and our settlements were fired on." You then say, "This is a startling admission from a Zionist scholar, and it is truly inexplicable for a historian of his credentials to claim that ethnic cleansing was a measure of protection for the colonizers against the colonized. Colonizers do not defend themselves, they attack. Those committing ethnic cleansing in 1948 were the invaders, while the indigenous people were cleansed. The victims are blamed for defending their towns and villages, protecting their families, and resenting the colonization of their land." In this passage, you describe the Palestinian experience of a human phenomenon that, as I encounter regularly in my work as a psychotherapist. Blaming victims for their own suffering and siding with perpetrators is a universal human problem. Not only are the Palestinians still enduring a 76-year ongoing Nakba, they are forced to defend themselves as if they are the bad guys in this story. The wound of the original abuse is made infinitely worse by the shocking realization that victims face, that those with the most power to help them not only turn their backs on their suffering, but actively support the abusers. You list many outrageous and indefensible acts Israel commits on a regular basis. One of them, and I quote, is, "Israel exercises the right to label any person a terrorist with no obligation of explanation or proof and kill that person." As a settler colonial society, Israel considers all Palestinians, including children and babies, terrorists simply because they are Palestinians. I grew up in Israel, so I grew up on that narrative. When Israel thinks of Palestinians, it is not as fellow human beings, but as obstacles in the way of their coveted exclusively Jewish state. You are a member of a group victimized by settler colonialism and genocide. You grew up under Israeli occupation, and you offer your first-hand testimony about the crime Israel and its supporters have been committing against your people. It's not just what you say in this book that matters. It is the fact that you're making your voice heard. The Palestinian voice is notably absent from legacy media and from history classes in schools. Israel has been waging a war against educational institutions in the West that attempt to teach the truth about Zionism, the Nakba, and Israel itself, and has largely succeeded in controlling the narrative. The genocide of the Palestinian people is made possible in the context of a world that still denies injustice, still engages with and justifies imperialism, colonialism, and the inevitable crimes against humanity that they foster. In a climate where Israel continues to enjoy inexplicable and profoundly immoral cover and support, we need your voice. Your perspective as a Christian pastor and a leader, your faith and theology are also incredibly relevant. This is not only because you are a Palestinian, but because of the Palestinian story exposes the widespread corruption in our world. Precisely what Jesus, I suppose, came to address and encouraged humanity to correct. Jesus lived under Roman colonialism, and the context in which he worked is just as relevant today as it was in his time. Christ in the Rubble is an incredible resource for us as activists. It provides a response to every single challenge that we might face from Zionists and Israel supporters, and also that we can present to those who hesitate to offer their support to the Palestinians because of confusion or ignorance or fear. In the book you say, I believe in creative non-violent resistance. Projects like this book club on Palestine are our way, the way for the rest of us to offer our support to Palestinian resistance. We are honored to discuss your book in this series and would love to hear from you today. Please speak to us as activists, as people who care deeply about the suffering of the Palestinian people, our fellow human beings, and as people who want to see humanity develop and grow beyond tribalism, division, and the avoidable infliction of suffering. We would appreciate if you can speak to us for as long as you like, maybe up to 30 minutes, and we will then open the forum for questions and discussions. Thank you, and stage over to you. Over to you, Munther.
Thank you, Abigail, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this conversation, for your interest in my book. Thank you for your very kind words. This is a book I wish I did not have to write, to be honest. And I just concluded a small tour in which, people would buy the book, and I say, I wish I could tell you to enjoy it. This is not the kind of book you will enjoy. It's a difficult book, and it came from the heart of a very difficult reality, which is nothing in comparison to what's happening in Gaza. It's a book that we have to write, that I had to write, and it's a message that must be heard, and I truly appreciate everyone who amplifies this message. The book is called Christ in the Rubble, Faith, the Bible, and the Genocide in Gaza. And it came out of my advocacy, my work in the last 18 months to speak on behalf of the people of Gaza, to call for a ceasefire, but also to challenge the church, the Western church in particular, for its complicity in what is happening in Gaza today. And it's not just a challenge to Christians. I think it's a challenge to all people of faith, but I like to speak mainly about my own tradition. Naturally, the book talks about these three elements: faith, the Bible, and the genocide. Why I wrote it? I wrote it, of course, first and foremost as a pastor. As a pastor, by the way, who does not believe that my work should be confined to talking about prayer and fasting and how one gets to heaven. To us, it's important. I belong to a tradition that strongly believes in making our faith relevant to our challenges. And how do we address the injustices around us, given that in my small congregation, everyone is a victim of occupation in a way or another. Those who know me know that I've been talking about these issues for years. But of course, with the war, I was given somehow a platform. I'll talk about it. As a result, many people now know more about my work. In the book, I tried to talk first about the genocide. A genocide that I argued was normalized, and now I would say even denied. My fear is that we as Palestinians will spend years to come trying to prove to the world that a genocide took place against the Palestinians, which shocks me that this genocide continues to be even denied today, given the fact that the term genocide is not a term Palestinians invented. I did not write the definition of what a genocide is and what a genocide is not. And I tried to show that in the book, that we were just following the definition that the Western world lectured us on what a genocide is and what a genocide is not. And the proofs are, and the studies are overwhelming towards that extent. In fact, since I wrote the book, more reports came, most notably from Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, and a commission by the UN, showing that Israel's actions fit exactly what a genocide is. The question, as I say in the book, is not whether there is a genocide or not. The question is, why isn't the church calling it a genocide? Why aren't people of faith calling it a genocide? And by the way, it's the same with the term apartheid, you know. It was denied, continues to be denied, even as we speak today. So it was important for me, even as a pastor who wants to speak on my people. And by the way, to me, whether it's, you know, the terminology matter, I'll say about this more in the end. Because many people continue to push back. It's like, you are a pastor, why do you focus on words? And I say, no, words matter. The right description matter. If it's a genocide, we need accountability. So that's why it was important for me to describe, you know, why I believe and why many believe it is a genocide. And so there's a whole chapter. Again, it was very difficult to write about the horrific reality in Gaza, mainly in the first year of the war, because the book was concluded, the first manuscript, after a year from writing the book. But beyond talking about what happened in Gaza, I felt it's truly important to address the things that frustrated us as Palestinians on how this war was talked on and described, namely that everyone seems to have isolated October 7 as a separate incident and begin from there. So I insisted that there is a context. Reading October 7th within its context is not to justify what happened on that day. No, not at all. But I think if people protest what happened on October 7th, yet were silent for all the years before October 7th, there's something serious here. It says a lot about you if you were silent for all these years, then all of a sudden were appalled by what happened on October 7th. I would even argue it shows a sense of racism in which, you know, some people matter when they are killed, another when they are killed and oppressed, you don't speak out. Because this war has confirmed to us that the world does not look at us as Palestinians as equal human beings. So as a result, you know, I had to write that this war did not start on October 7th. And I spent a long time arguing. And by the way, a lot of the things in the book come from real arguments. God knows how many webinars I've done since the war began. God knows how many interviews. God knows, you know, when people ask me, are you okay receiving questions? I say, I've heard every question that is there that challenges our position as Palestinians. So we have to emphasize this did not start on October 7th. We have to emphasize that, you know, some have said October 7th to Israel is 9/11 to the Americans. And I asked, so what is the equivalent for 75 years of oppression for the Palestinians? Why isn't anybody talking about the fact that Israel was literally ruined, was literally built on the ruins of the towns and villages of the people of Gaza? For those who were appalled by the kidnapping of children on October 7th, and I hope we all agree this is wrong, this is evil, Why have you been silent when Palestinian children are kidnapped for all these years? Hundreds every year are kidnapped, and so on. So you have to unpack the context that of that incident of October 7th, and you have to challenge the Zionist discourse that October 7th was motivated by religious hatred towards Jews, as if, there is no context, there is no Nakba, there is no occupation, and there is no siege. I felt that with the Western media's coverage on the war, many ignored the fact that Gaza was under a blockade for more than 16 years, a blockade in which even the amounts of calories that were allowed to enter Gaza were calculated. The fact that Gaza was described as hell on earth for the children, even before October 7th. And this, by the way, all of this idea of talking about the context, to us as Palestinian Christian activists, came from the fact that numerous church statements that responded to October 7th ignored the context. And we were shocked because people knew, and all of a sudden, they just followed the Zionist discourse and condemned everything on October 7th without any reference to the context, without any reference to everything that preceded October 7th. And again, at least it's about consistency. You can't be appalled about the killing of one people group and then silent about the killing of another people group. And part of explaining the history, and again, here is where I, as a pastor, was forced to explain history and research it very well to show people what the reality is to explain that, and this is something I argue throughout the book, there is no conflict. What we have in Palestine is a reality of settler colonialism that led to the creation of a reality of apartheid. I think this is one of the biggest obstacles today towards solving the mess we live in, the tragedy we live in, which is the insistence of many, whether countries or churches or even peace activists, on the language of a conflict, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So we need to go back to what happened in 1948, to what the Nakba is, and what Zionism is. Because this idea of a conflict between two entities is so misleading. So a big part of the book is actually history. And a big part of the book is about the reality under occupation, why it is apartheid, what the siege is, the reality in Gaza for 15, 16 years before October 7th. Hamas, of course, what their ideology is, how their ideology evolved, why they use violence, and why we as Palestinian Christians do not approve with Hamas's methods or ideology. So there is a lot of that in the book. At least, the first 3 chapters that explain the history, the context. And again, it's not just an exercise. It's that we needed to provide answers to all the challenges we received throughout our advocacy. But then the book is also about the Bible. And by that, I mean, it's about the misuse of the Bible. In Palestine, the Bible is weaponized. The Bible is weaponized against the Palestinian people. And I can't think of any other context today in which religion and theology are used in a way to shift the discourse in such a manner. Here is what I mean. I go all over the United States and Europe and visit churches. And in those churches, everywhere in the West, the reality of colonialism and ethnic cleansing is simply described as Jews returning to their land. So you see, what happened in 1948 was given a religious language that changed and shifted the discourse completely, making the Palestinians the invader, the Palestinians the indigenous people in the land, and then those who came and took our land were described as merely returning. So now it's our fault as Palestinians for occupying someone else's land. That people is now returning to our land. This is the power of theology and religion. Palestinian theologian Munther Isaac always talks about theology, religion as the software of empire. Empire does not only rely on the hardware, the weapons, the money, the political support, but it also needs religion, the software, and as Munther calls it. Christian Zionism is so strong. Christian Zionism provides the religious narratives that not only shifts the discourse, but makes acts of oppression, violence, colonialism, even apartheid sound justifiable, even righteous. And so in the book, I talk a lot about the colonial narrative, which talks about fighting good, fighting for good against evil. If you wish, the Judeo-Christian tradition. Just look at the way Palestinians were described throughout this war, the constant dehumanization of Palestinians. The Bible was used as part and parcel of a matrix that I talk in the book about of three: colonialism or coloniality, religion, and racism. The three work hand in hand together to explain how the world was okay with the massacre of maybe 17,000 Palestinian children. Not only was okay with that, but as I said, justifying it, making it a righteous act, and then blaming the victim for it. Part of it is the belief that Palestinians are less human. There's so much in the book about that. Part of it is how much Israel serves the interest of the superpowers. There's so much in the book about that. But also part of it is how religion was utilized and used. The book includes many examples of how Christian leaders responded to the genocide, whether by calling for it, justifying it, or being silent, or just calling for peace. For those who read the book, know that there are many, many examples. These examples were hard not just to write about, but in the beginning to read and to see. Especially that some of these came from people we knew. This is what made all of this hard. In fact, the examples I give in the book of what Christian leaders said and all of that, a lot of it came from personal engagement with these Christian leaders. Because I know many of them, and we engaged with many of them. I wish I could tell you how hard it was for us as Palestinian Christians to read some of these statements, to hear about or hear from a pastor who says, turn Gaza into a parking lot, or to read how we were described with the biblical term Amalekites, which means we should be utterly destroyed, or how horrible it was that this war was described as a just war. How difficult it is for us to hear congressmen quote the Bible to call for the destruction of Gaza. And on and on. I can give many examples. And we responded to these claims. And our response was usually characterized by anger. We were angry. We called them out. It was shocking. It was horrifying. But it was also traumatizing and painful. Because some of the people in Gaza actually heard about these responses and they couldn't believe it. Why are our sisters and brothers calling for our destruction? Some were even signing the missiles. It's shocking, this obsession that many Christians in the West have with violence. It shocks us because Palestinian Christians by default are nonviolent. To us, it's one package. You are a Christian, it means you are nonviolent. But this obsession with violence that many Western Christians have, even to the extent that they justify the killing of children, was shocking to us. And this is one people group, though this is this is one response. I mean, calling for the genocide, justifying it, calling it Israel's right to defend itself, which, always shocks me is, what do Palestinians have to do to merit defending themselves? Why is it always Israel has the right to defend itself? Do Palestinians get the right to defend themselves? And by the way, a lot of the things in the book I adopt is the method of we should not always defend ourselves. And I'm tired of Palestinians who always use this defense mechanism. When someone say these things, push back. Do Palestinians have the right to defend themselves? When people say October 7th, why were you silent before October 7th? It speaks of your racism. And so we need to push back on people who keep using these arguments, and not just to always begin by condemning and saying, and as if we have to justify ourselves. In the book, I talk a lot about those Christians who responded to the genocide by merely making statements that adopt this narrative in which only Palestinians are blamed. Israel has the right to defend itself, and so on. I talk a lot about neutral Christians who pray for both sides equally, especially when there is a genocide. I mean, it's shocked us. What's always missing and continues to be missing today from the language of churches is anything that condemns Israel. They condemn Hamas for what they did on October 7th using the strongest language. I mean, I kid you not, even last week when the hospital was attacked, there was a statement from a certain bishop, and he did not bring himself to condemn the attack. It shocked me. It shocked me. He just said, we call on all parties to respect the international law, as if anybody cares about the international law these days. So you read that chapter, which I call Theology of the Genocide, and you sense there is so much anger behind what we wrote in this chapter, what I wrote in that chapter, is the book. The genocide, the Bible, the weaponization, but there is a strong element in the book about our faith, what we believe in. We called our siblings to repent for supporting a genocide. We believe in the God of compassion, God of justice. And we feel that Christians must speak truth to power. The book speaks honestly about the challenge of maintaining a faith in God in the midst of a genocide, because it was hard. It was really hard to maintain that faith in the midst of this horrible, horrible reality. How do I preach? And the title of the book, Christ in the Rubble, came from the manger we created in our church during Christmas of 2023. You see the image, Christ in the Rubble. And I was trying to respond pastorally through my sermons and act to the attacks on our people in Gaza. Especially the whole idea came when the church was attacked, the church of St. Porphyrios. 18 people were killed, including 9 children, including relatives of people in my church in Bethlehem. So how do you preach? What do you say? Whatever you say will fall short. And I remember saying then is, I don't have any answers. Why didn't God respond other than to say, God is under the rubble in Gaza. He's in the hospital. He suffers with those who suffer. This was my kind of pastoral response to what happened. He's in solidarity with us in our pain and suffering. And then this message was translated into Christ in the Rubble during Christmas. I talk in the book how we created it, the inspiration behind it, how we met as families, how we felt that night when we did it, and the response of the church next day, which, everyone was shocked, some were in tears. And the sermon I preach about the meaning of Christmas as the solidarity of God with the marginalized and the oppressed, Jesus being born among the occupied. So in one sense, I was trying to respond to the needs of the people. But in another, maybe indirect way, I was giving a different meaning of what it means to believe in the God of the Bible from the position of those on the receiving end of an empire, rather from the position of those who are the empire, and then justifying their expansion. So Christ in the Rubble was our response to the genocide as a community in Bethlehem, which then became a message to all the world. I insisted that when the world was justifying and rationalizing the killing of our children, we see the image of Christ in every child pulled from under the rubble. Our response to what I talked about in the book, the racism and the dehumanization of Palestinians, which is so systematic, so horrifying, was to see the image of God, the image of Christ in every Palestinian child. So faith was our response. It's our pain. It's our struggle to have hope. I tried to talk about the hope in the book. Talked about sumud, about survival, because it's so difficult to have any hope in these difficult days. And Christ in the Rubble became a message to the world. The moment we shared the image on my social media of Jesus under the rubble, it literally went all over the world, viewed all over the world. It gave me a platform to speak to the media, to the international media, to Arab media. I was overwhelmed by hundreds, maybe more than 100 interviews during Christmas season. In addition to the webinars. And I insisted this is what Christmas looks like in Bethlehem. You know, many people are not used to thinking of Christmas with the Palestinians. And so Christ in the Rubble was able to speak about the plight of Palestinians to millions around the world. And then I preached a sermon on Christmas in which I called out the complicity of the church. I said, silence is complicity. Gaza has become the moral compass of our world. I said people need to look in the mirror and ask, where was I when Gaza was going through a genocide? A sentence that was later quoted in the International Court of Justice's case against Israel, the South African case. This sermon remains a mystery to me, to be honest. How one sermon from Bethlehem reached tens of millions of people, literally tens of millions, heard it all over the world, was circulated, viewed, and discussed, and rebuked, changed many, received response in many churches around the world who, even a year after, created similar Christ in the Rubble manger. It became a movement of those who feel that shame on us for justifying a genocide and not trying to do what's best. But it also became the message that when there is a genocide, diplomacy is not a response. Neutrality is not a response. Soft peacemaking is not a response. I spoke in the sermon in a very strong language. I believe in speaking truth to power. And I did the same in the book. And it's not about calling names. It's not, for example, about saying Zionism is racism. You need to articulate why we believe, why do I believe that Zionism is the core issue here? Why I believe is it apartheid? Why I believe it's important to call apartheid for what it is? Why it's important today to insist that what's happening is a genocide? Why it's important for anyone to be in solidarity with the Palestinians, to insist that speaking truth to power and calling things by name. I find that a lot of the things I try to argue for today is this false, I believe, naive understanding of peacemaking, which understand peacemaking as neutrality, or as positioning yourself in the middle and calling and praying for both sides. As I say, you know, can you imagine if in South Africa in the 80s, people prayed for peace between the black and the white and challenged the black people, don't call it apartheid, it's offensive, don't talk about ethnic cleansing, and so on. So we need to adopt a new discourse, especially given that there is a genocide, and genocide that compels us to continue speaking about Gaza until the war stops, and to continue to challenge this ongoing dehumanization of Palestinians, this ongoing racism, And maybe since the book was written, one final comment, and I want to conclude here. With everything that's happening in our world today, it's imperative that we speak, because we are heading towards a very dangerous moment in which might is right. Trump talks about owning Gaza by ethnically cleansing 2 million people. A suggestion of ethnic cleansing, which ethnic cleansing is a war crime now. You have here the president of a superpower casually suggesting ethnic cleansing. It's an indication of deep racism towards Palestinian, but also total disrespect to any laws or any norms. This is scary. Where we're heading, I believe, is very, very scary. So I hope that through Christ in the Rubble, faith leaders will speak. Christian leaders will speak. Let me talk about my own people. And I hope that at least by this book, I contribute towards that yet again, and not again, will truly become not again. Because what we're saying today is that never again has become yet again. So we all need to ask ourselves, what have we done? What will we do? What are we doing so that never again truly becomes never again? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Munther, so much for taking the time to be with us. This has been amazing. You've not only written an amazing book, I don't know how you managed to put so much in this book. It's extraordinary, and not a word is wasted. Your voice is loud and clear, and also you have provided an incredible summary today with us. So I'm absolutely grateful. We're all grateful, and we're looking forward to studying your book together. And we wish you well, and God bless you and your family.
Thank you.
I hope you keep safe and stay safe, because I know it's not safe. So I'll be thinking of you, and I'll be praying for you and your safety and your family and everybody else in my own way, and I'm sure everybody else will do that in their own way as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, and have a good night, everyone.